Welcome, everyone, to the Tabernacle Podcast. We are back again with another episode. As always, we are the worship team, worship volunteers, worship staff of Trinity Fellowship Church, based in Amarillo, Texas, but we have lots of campuses all over this great state. And we also have an amazing online community at tfc.org. So if you are looking for a church home, obviously we're incredibly biased and partial, but we couldn't recommend Trinity Fellowship more to you if you're looking for a church home. Really excited today, bringing on another guest. This is becoming a theme, which I'm very excited about. We're going to do a long stretch of episodes here where we're going to bring in lots of guests, lots of friends, lots of family members of the Trinity Fellowship family tree to be a part of this. Good Lord. And we're excited to introduce Mr. Billy Borden.
Welcome, Billy.
We're very excited that he's here.
Hey.
So I'm going to give just a little synopsis of who Billy is and why he's here and why he's going to be such the perfect person for this topic. So Billy is a part of our worship team. He plays acoustic, he plays bass, plays a whole host of other instruments, but those are the ones that we need him most on. He also heads up and runs our Tabernacle Men's community group. So the guys that get together, all of our either worship leaders, vocalists, or musicians that serve at either Willow Creek or Hollywood Road. Billy's their guy. So Billy's putting together get-togethers and kind of happenings and things like that for them to all get together and hang out. And it's really kind of ballooned into this amazing community. And then also, he is an amazing counselor here in town at Live Well and does a brilliant job at that. So this particular topic is going to be really profound to have him. So, Billy, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. Now, the truth is, we have to get this out of the way. We shot this once. So we don't want to be not up front, but we shot this once, so we're going to get a second crack at it, and it's going to be even better.
Yeah, I believe it.
So the first cut will be buried somewhere for, paying customers only.
Just video footage, no audio.
Subscribers. You have access to... the lost episodes of the Tabernacle Podcast. There's very big market for that, from what I've heard. So we're going to get into we've been talking about the pillars of building a culture. So the initial question that we asked is if you are a part of a church, if you're heading up a worship department or you are tasked with taking over the worship at your church, and somebody says, hey, we want you to put together a worship community or a worship culture. We want a culture of worship. These terms that kind of get thrown around in our Christianese dialect.
Sure.
What would you begin to do in trying to complete that task? Somebody says, I want a worship culture, a culture of worship here at our church. So we started to go through what would be the pillars. Because you can't, in building a house, you've got to put in the foundation. You've got to do, the beams. You've got to do the framing. You've got to do all of the uncool stuff, so that eventually you can do what color are the cabinets and what the carpet and the sound system, all that fun stuff. You got to do all of the kind of the non-fun work first. And so these pillars kind of set in. Hey, if nothing else, if we can't do anything else, these are the 5 things that we're going to focus on.
Yeah.
So you can go back and watch other episodes to get those. The one that we're discussing today, I'm very excited about, is community and friendship.
Yeah.
And why community and friendship is so important if you're going to build a worship culture, and how, again, all 5 of these, I can't look at any of them and say, well, if you were just going to focus on 1 or 2, you can't. You need all 5 of these, in my opinion, in our opinion, in order to do this. These are necessary parts of the house. Just the same way that you couldn't go to a builder and say, hey, look, really want to spend more money on the flooring, so can we skip half the framing?
Right. Or crucial, load-bearing points
instead
in
of
the wall.
16-inch on centers, can we do like 36? Because you're like, I'm not building this house.
Right. That's unsafe, yeah.
So that's the idea. And so since Billy heads up our community group for all of our Tabernacle guys, and he's a professional licensed counselor, he's the most brilliant person for this. So we have kind of a little bit of a synopsis or kind of a summary of what we would state is kind of our belief behind community and friendship. Will you read that wrong?
Yes, absolutely. The statement goes, one of the greatest parts of being on a worship team is the community that comes with it. As a team, you work together to lead people into the presence of God. These events have a catalyzing effect on us, and it instills in us the desire to go deeper with those team members. Playing services is just the tip of the iceberg. As a leader of a community, it's our responsibility to cultivate opportunities for our team to connect relationally without an instrument or microphone in our hands. Community events are Bible studies, small groups, watching football games, hanging out at someone's house, playing fantasy football, or other things. Community activities need to be equal parts not spiritually focused as well as spiritually focused. We believe it's important to give your team the opportunity to build relational equity with one another around non-church activities.
So there it is. That kind of sums up our belief on this idea. So the first question I'm going to lob out to you, Billy, because we've all played in bands.
Yep.
The act of creating music with a group of people has this kind of otherworldly effect on you. It has this synergistic kind of bond that we joked last time that there are people that I've made music with for years that I don't know outside of music I would have spent time with.
Yeah.
Not that they weren't, but music was the binding agent, and it kind of allowed like we make great music together, and that is the reason I'm really connected to you, and my friendship is based around
Absolutely.
that. So if we remove that, I'm not sure if I'm spending as much time with you.
Sure.
So how far back does it go for you playing music?
Long ways back. I grew up in it. All my family's real musical. Christmases are a hoot because we all make a lot of noise and all have that. God's given a lot of members of my family this really special gift of this ear, just being able to play and pick up, respond, jump in. So I go back, long time with that. I've got a brother plays extraordinary electric. Nephews. My son is a brilliant ear. So it's just kind of embedded in our family. But we go so far back, and it's we played in just like you, we played in bands for a long time. So yeah, it runs deep in the Borden fam, this music thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So there is a community component. There's like a friendship component that happens in making music. And so all of our members that are a part of Trinity Fellowship that serve on the weekends, we have a lot of time on task, to use a very kind of job type word. But there's a lot we're playing regularly. So I see you handful of times a month between all kinds of events. So there's a lot of friendship. There's a lot of opportunity for friendship. But this particular topic that we want to discuss is how necessary it is to build friendship and relationship outside of just that task. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Do you think it becomes a very common place for musicians serving in the weekends or serving in services to kind of get used to, I've done the thing, I'm going to go now?
Oh, from firsthand experience. Yes, absolutely. For years, I played on the worship team, and as soon as we were done, I was out. And for years, I kind of operated like that. So I think that's probably why, that's why we chose to make this a tentpole of our culture. Is we wanted things to be a little bit different, and not to let guys who really needed community, who really needed relationships within the local church, to just come in and treat it like a gig. Because I did it for so long, and I really wish that I kind of had an eye for that, of okay, I see Joe kind of floating on the edge of the worship team. He's kind of, he comes in and he goes. He's not really involved in the community life of the church. So that's kind of why we have made it a tentpole and attempted to provide gatherings that are non-service related, to really get to know guys outside of the context of music, or outside of the context of using their gifting. Because whenever you're in service mode on the weekends, we don't have a ton of time to talk much about the deep things in life. Really it's a lot of pretty quick, hey, how's it going? Just surface level stuff. By necessity, we're trying to rehearse, and then we do 2 services. That's a lot of it is like you mentioned, time on task. So it is really important to have time outside of that, to build friendships and to build relationships outside of just doing the job.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, the life and the things that the musicians are looking for are so often found, or actually are always found, outside of doing music itself.
Yeah.
Right? They're looking to meet Jesus. They're looking to find somebody who truly accepts them and loves them for who they are, not for what they do. So this is a great way to pull it outside of that context. And whenever you don't have an instrument in your hands, you're all equal, right? It's just we're all just guys who are pursuing Jesus in the case of the men's group. So I think it's super important.
I have a question for you thinking about this. I experienced this when I was younger a lot, and still probably have to check myself on it. What we do in a service, especially our types of services, is that there's a very strong kind of emotional response to what's happening. So there's a high level of expectation. There's a lot of people in the room. There's kind of this huge amount of adrenaline that comes in. There's kind of a building up of energy in the room, and then kind of this panic of like, oh my gosh, is this going to work? And then it works, and then something powerful happens in the room. There's a response. We respond. They respond. We respond. There's all this responding happening. And you finish the set and you're kind of exhausted in all aspects. You're physically exhausted. You're mentally exhausted. All kinds of emotionally exhausted. Do you think it's easy for guys to walk away from a weekend thinking I've connected with people when they actually haven't, just because you're exhausted and like this moment has happened and we've all done this, like we all did a thing. Okay, I've connected with people. Do you think that there's a bit of a mirage in that happening, and that the stuff outside of playing music is why that's so necessary?
I do. There's a little adage I always go back to. It is the people with whom you have the deepest relationships are the ones who ask the second question. In other words, hey, how are things going? Well, okay. Oh, I hope that goes well for you. The second question is, tell me why. Like you're instantly kind of pushing somebody into a vulnerability, that makes a person, when you do it in a safe space, it makes people want to share. So music is a great jump off point for community, because what do you do when you're on stage? You make yourself vulnerable. Either as a vocalist or an instrumentalist, if I'm playing bass on stage and I'm really feeling the worship, the Holy Spirit's thick, everything's just kind of working out, and I just feel this desire to fill a line with something, just to play, express myself. There's vulnerability in that, because if I I'm telling other people, I'm expressing myself, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it begs a second question in that.
That's a great way to put it.
So
that's a really good way to put it.
If we happen to have just a stellar weekend and the worship is great, the second question would be some sort of follow-up. Like, hey, we have put ourselves out on the table. If we were to take one more step into that, wow, that something even deeper could happen. Little prophetic word over this past weekend in a separate situation. We were leading worship, and a guy came and he said, if you're willing, the Lord says, to take one step further than you were planning on this morning, then he will come 10 steps closer to you than you were counting on. I thought, man, that was heavy. Okay. So if I step into a Sunday morning, if we come into rehearsal and I've rehearsed myself on time and practiced and, gotten to where I feel comfortable with the songs, and I get in, and that's kind of where I had planned to leave it. Whatever else happens, happens. If you make that next step in and say, I'm going to really intentionally push harder into the Spirit. I'm going to really shut everything else out around as much as I can, still staying in tune with, what's going on the stage, but really push in harder. Then God loves watching his kids do that, that one extra little step. And then he makes 10 steps towards us. So yeah, there is a obviously a lot of us will do that, and I'm guilty of that too. It's Wednesday night, first Wednesday service. I'm pooped. It's been a long week, Yeah. Let's wrap this thing up and head on home, But for the most part, it's since we have been at Trinity, it's been my desire to seek further, to go further. We finish the service. We text a lot after the services, a lot of the guys, and there's a lot of times, Teal, you're not on stage. You may be out of town or something, and we finish up, and then, hour or two after the service, we'll get a text from you saying, wow, like that was, you guys were salty today. So it's just that, we played our set. The Lord has done his thing. We've dispersed. But one second question brings everything back into the table and refocuses on what we've just done.
Man, that's okay. So you touched on a couple things there that I think can kind of set up the next place that we're going. It's your story of how you got to Trinity weaves into that second question thing. So give us kind of a synopsis, as deep as you want, of how you got to be sitting in that chair.
Well, how Trinity happened?
Yeah.
My wife and I were in Clovis, New Mexico for 3 decades, the better part of 3 decades. And we were rooted, established. There's no reason for us to think Clovis was not going to be our home. But we just got to a point where really, obviously the Lord's led us through a lot of seasons in our life, but this is one that was so intentional and so, we just knew it was God. And we just decided one day we were going to drive over to Amarillo and go to that big church. That's how Clovis, I think, sees Trinity or, Hillside or some of these, the big church, And my sweet wife, she's the cruise ship decision maker, and I'm the speedboat decision maker. So this is how I knew it was from the Lord, because it would have been my MO to come over to this church and just have a great experience and let's move to Amarillo, But it was her decision. She's like, I really feel like God may be calling us over here. So for, I don't know, almost a year, I guess, we were just driving back and forth. And we were burning up the road sometimes 2-3 times a week just to come over. Because when the second we set foot in the church, it was home for us. It was our new place to be. We had been out of the church for a good minute. We've all had some bitterness from church hurt and all that sort of stuff. Well, we took it a lot harder than we should have, and we kind of sat in our own filth, so to speak, without seeking any kind of restoration. And so Trinity was instantly our place of restoration. And I think it was the second time we were over there. We had come over for a first Wednesday night, and we got the time difference wrong. We live 6 miles from Central Standard Time, but so we were there an hour and 40 minutes early, and you were up on stage. So I just wandered up there and talked to you and asked you what time the service started. But truthfully, because a lot of the bitterness that we had toward the church was through worship.
Yeah.
And so I wanted nothing to do with it. God, if you're bringing us back into church, I'll clean the toilets, I'll usher, I'll work in the youth ministry, kids ministry, whatever, just not music. And so I intentionally, that first time you and I talked, did not say a word about music, but somehow or another, God put it on your heart to reach out to me not long after that and just say, hey, are you a musician? And I was like, darn it. So here we are, it's just like, I got this image in my head of God having his finger on the pause button. Like it had been on pause for a good minute, and then God was like, all right, now get back in there where I've called you to be. Mm-hmm. So, it's branched us out. It's made we had been pretty reclusive people, especially in the decade leading up to coming to Trinity, and it's the complete opposite now. We are leading groups and Heidi's on the prayer team. Yeah, so
you guys are staples around the church, which is pretty awesome. A side note is that Billy's also a counselor at Amarillo High, and so it's really funny to see on Sunday mornings is that it's he is surrounded by students, not the youth pastor, not the cool worship leaders, not any of the cool musicians. It's Billy who is surrounded by all students. He's Funkle Billy. So
Everybody's weird uncle.
it's pretty awesome. Billy! It's pretty awesome. The kids are like magnetized to him.
So awesome. So Billy, a question for you. So you're talking a little bit about before we started filming about the Walk to Emmaus and your involvement in the community there. What role has that played in your walk with Jesus, being involved in the community there, and how do they do it? What are some things that work really well, that the Walk to Emmaus community does really well? Because they do a good job, I think.
They do. And it's, there's Emmaus communities all over the world, really. But in this area, there's one in Amarillo, there's one up in the top part of the Panhandle, there's one in Clovis, there's one in Lubbock, and it's every single person that we've met that they've gone on a walk to Emmaus, no matter where it's at, has the same experience. So what is the common bond in that? It's our experience that there's no pretense. We're not trying to give you something to get something out of it. For our side of it, it's just, we want you to experience a weekend where you find what the love of God truly looks like through Him and through others. It's just poured out on you. And so we go back to that vulnerability word. You are never more vulnerable than when you have no place to hide from the love of God. Yeah. And when you're out there and when people are just, silently behind the scenes serving you and taking care of all your needs and everything is met, where you just have 72 hours to sit truly in God's presence and to hear people's testimonies and stories that are just raw. And nothing makes you feel more like coming home than hearing that somebody else is rowing the same boat you are. In the concept of God's love, without I really need to be better about that. There's none of that, because that is, it makes you kind of feel legal, like I have to do these things so I can have a relationship with God. It's like God just peels all those layers of that onion back and just says, it's grace. Yeah. There's no yes and or grace, but it's just grace. And I'll take you just like you are right now, as you are. And Emmaus is really built heavily on groups beyond the 72 hours.
Right. Continuing that.
Yeah, and they're really insistent that after your walk, you jump in with some guys, and they have a little card, like just kind of a guideline type card, that whenever you are meeting with your group, there's no, hey, we're going to sit here, we got an hour to meet, so we're going to talk about the weather and our kids for 40 minutes, and then try to get around to some meat. It's like you follow this order of the cards, and they're deep and they're heavy and they're hard hitting, and it gets you right into some heavy conversation. The second question is the first question on that card, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It's like, so you continue to build that fire that was ignited, and it keeps it going and keeps it going.
Right. Well, it's a way to continue that. If you guys have that experience together, if you have 72 hours together where you're experiencing the Lord's presence, kind of like what you mentioned with the worship experience, or this one-time event where you come face to face with God, there needs to be follow-up and continued touch points with other people, because the experience is awesome, but to continue to come back to that place and remind yourself of who God is and what He's done. You might have that one moment of incredible revelation, but to actually walk it out and have it work itself from your head down into your heart, because those feelings will wear off, quickly, and you'll need to be in community to sustain that and to continue to nurture that relationship with the Lord. Thanks for sharing, Billy. That's awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
Now, between the two of you, I think this is worth talking about, because we touched on a couple things that have laid the groundwork for what the Tabernacle Men's Group has become. So you guys talk through this, because you initially started this process of creating this group. You handed it off to Billy. But what in the early days worked, what has not worked, and why is it currently working in its... Because the reason I think this is so important is that men are quite different.
Sure.
We're different animals when it comes to spending time together.
Yeah.
Our Tabernacle women's group that Macy runs, it's a complete different animal. Mm-hmm. Like what they do versus what the guys do. I mean, they're polar opposites, but they have the exact same effect.
Yeah.
That's what I think is fascinating, is that I don't know if we would ever probably do a co-ed type group, because I do think that both groups need something specific. The co-ed activity, I guess, would be actually leading a service on the weekend. That's your co-ed community activity. But I do want to chase that, but I don't want to chase it right now. So talk me through the process of creating the group, what worked and what hasn't worked, and why it's working right now.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because it has changed significantly. So the idea first came up to me. Macy came into the office one day after seeing Billy at Palace. I think Billy ran into Julia and Macy maybe at Palace, and they were talking about something, and he was like, they're talking about planning for the Tabernacle Women's Group, and he was like, do we have anything like that for men? And they're like, nope. And she came back and told me that Billy had just had a conversation, just asked about it, and I was like, Billy. Billy, my guy. Come on, let's go. So we met about it and talked about it. We started just with a simple Bible study in my house with some food. We would get some barbecue or something. The first group was quite a few guys, probably 20, 25. And then quickly it dropped off. So Billy, I'll turn it over to you at this point, and what was it like from that point forward? We started it at my house. That first night was an incredible success. Then after that, it kind of started to taper off, and I'll throw the ball to you for the rest of the story.
Yeah, so I did meet Macy. I don't remember if it was Julia or Zoe, but anyways, they were planning for a quarter. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do for the next 3 months? And so, initially I thought if we were going to form a group, that would be it. We're going to plan things out, and not at all what a men's group really is going to be like. I mean, I'm not much of a planner on things like that, so I don't know why I went into that. But I also came in with a misconception that, hey, we're a bunch of worshipers. Let's study the Psalms. Songs for singers, man, that's so we're going to just study the Psalms and break them apart. And it went, like you said, the first session went really well. Second session, there were probably half. Then the third session, there were half of that half.
It just kept having.
It just kept having. We just kept.
So it was just y'all two, one other person.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Really.
Much.
Yeah, the last time.
Good old Paul.
Yeah, Paul and Eli are there.
Because they live right down the street. That's probably why. But
it was our best study on the Psalms. Would you agree? I mean, that was a deep one.
Yeah, we had two of the best Psalms studies.
Everybody missed out. You guys missed out. All of you listening, all missed out.
Psalm 1. There you go.
Well, then, okay, so we started regrouping. And, it's a pride thing whenever you have in mind how a group should go and it doesn't work well. And then you start blaming yourself. You go, well, what are we doing wrong? Maybe guys just don't want to meet. In fact, I remember coming to you maybe this thing's not going to work out.
Yeah.
But Stephen was good to be diligent and say, no, we this is going to work. We just got to find the right street for it to travel down.
Because you had proof of it from the first one. Guys definitely.
Yep.
I mean, to have that many guys show up for the first one, there's proof there. Yep. Guys do want to get together. Mm-hmm. The execution is what takes some time. So
concurrently, while we were trying to launch this thing, we were doing our men's group, which was built around, there was a large group of guys that were getting together daily. So I knew that there was hunger. The guys had hunger for community. It was just how do we do it? So me and Billy met up, and I'll get back to you.
You, Stephen, said, well, maybe we need an event. We need to get out and do something. And well, instantly my mind starts churning, and I go back to the office, and I'm like, hey, Dwight's bachelor party, let's go out with the bazooka and shoot something. Let's make this crazy thing that guys would be crazy not to want to go to. And I go through this 10-minute explanation to Stephen of what we could do and how we should do it. And I'm like, we can do this, and that. And I'm, that would be so much fun. And Stephen goes, or we could go to a Sod Poodles game. Something so simple, and it was a smash. No, we didn't just have everybody come back. We had people bringing friends.
Yep.
Yeah, instantly.
Which was, also worship people just in different worship communities,
Sure.
but they wanted to invite because it was such a thing.
And we got guys that normally wouldn't have gone to an in-depth Bible study that did come to the Sod Poodles
Yeah.
game, which was important to me, or as we were talking about it.
Yeah. And so now that was instantly, obviously the answer. That was God saying, this is what it needs to be, because the guys on this worship team are filled in so many other areas. They do so many other things. They lead groups themselves. They're involved in our college ministry or children's ministry, and for a lot of the players, if you're not playing on the stage at Hollywood Road, you're playing at Willow Creek or vice versa, or if you're not playing there, you're playing for the kids' church, or it's constant giving. And so there is that. For us, the second question in that was, hey, how do we be vulnerable without the traditional study group?
Sure.
And then that became, hey, Cowboys are on TV Sunday night. What do you say we all go to Buffalo Wild Wings, eat some wings together, and watch a football game? And repeatedly, it is the whole group just about that comes out. It's like that is the thing that guys want is, vulnerability is expressed also in camaraderie.
100%.
Sure.
So if you've established this bond, and every single time we go out, it's funny to watch. Everybody sits with somebody different, and then you see them really engaging, like really, like almost forehead to forehead to be able to hear each other. But you're really getting into these deep questions, and then from that, I've seen this repeatedly. Also, someone like say, I would connect with Rito. One of our other bass players, and outside of that, then we would text, just he and I, outside of the group. So then there's these little pockets of connecting, and going out with coffee with Matt Baggs, or one of our piano players, and just that sort of thing. So then when we come back together, now it's like we're building a structure, a true structure.
Yeah.
So
the ironic thing about all this is my quote unquote fear was like, if we're not going to do anything spiritual, then no spiritual formation is going to take place. But the ironic part was actually spiritual formation started to take place because we weren't doing anything that was specifically like super spiritual. So that's why in the statement it says that community events can be non-spiritual as well as spiritual. But even the non-spiritual things that we do, like shoulder-to-shoulder activities instead of face-to-face, lead to spiritual conversations and formation and growth in community, and actual real discipleship taking place. But it's not in the method of us studying the Bible together necessarily, but it is through person-to-person contact.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see that happening, and it's completely opposite of what I expected, I suppose, but better.
Do you think? I'd be curious both your opinions on this, both from kind of how through a pastoral stance and then also through a counseling stance. Do you think that low point of entry, something as casual as a football game or something like that, is the keystone for guys opening up, that guys really have a 1 in 1,000% chance of opening up in just a sit down, let's sit across from each other, I've never met you.
Oh man. Yeah.
But I'm just, there's so much in that we get it stuck in our brains of like, well, it's got to look like this and it has to be like this. We read a book. So another example of this is about 2 years ago. 2 years ago?
Yeah.
We did kind of this discipleship challenge, but in the discipleship challenge was physical challenges. It was workout routines. It was all kinds of the idea was how many guys were there? 20 something?
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Probably 20 plus guys that had all signed up and said, okay, I want to be a part of this. And in it was mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional areas. And you had to pick something in those 4 areas that you wanted to work on over, what was it, 70 days?
Yeah, 70 days.
And it was fascinating to watch because most of the guys would say, I can commit to this for 70 days, but I can't do this all year. But there were guys that would, might be spotty at the meetings, like because we would meet up once a week. But there were guys that stayed consistent all the way through it. And the reason why I bring all of that up is that there were guys that made massive strides in their life, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, all these different ways, because it was around the concept of a thing. We're all going to do a thing for a period of time. There's a definitive begin time and there's a definitive end time, which I don't know what it is. I've not met a guy that doesn't ask at least one of those questions when it comes to, hey, you want to go do something, like when, and when will I be done?
What am I committing to?
Can I take my car?
I'll meet you there.
I'll meet you there. There's a thing in that guys need kind of a few check boxes before I'm going to jump in. And some of these activities, while they don't seem overtly spiritual on the outside, they do some really pivotal things in a man's heart and in his mind to get them ready to have the second question.
Yeah.
Some guys, it may take an entire NFL season of Cowboys games, going and hanging out, to get to a place where Billy can say, hey, I overheard you say something in passing. What's going on with that?
Yeah.
You couldn't ask that question first game. They'd be like, oh, it's nothing. It's not that big of a deal. I don't
Or
really
you
want
wouldn't
to talk
even
about it.
know because they wouldn't even say anything.
They wouldn't even say anything. It takes that time. So I say all of that as an encouragement that if you are listening to this and you are the one feeling this pressure or this overwhelming anxiety to create this group that's got to have all of this profound fruit come from it, relax. Take your time. It's a slow burn.
Yeah.
Just hang
Every
out.
guy I've met, for the most part, it's a slow burn. It's going to take some time before somebody's ready to truly open up.
Yeah, for
to
sure.
truly start that conversation. But we've seen such unbelievable fruit in our weekend services come from these groups.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And the reality is that when you look at a full calendar year of get-togethers, it's 4, 5. People would think, well, that's not enough big get-togethers. You got to be doing something every single week, kind of to your point. We got to be doing more.
Right.
No, because we're together every single week.
Right.
We're doing a highly emotional, highly spiritual, highly physical, although people don't think it's very physical. Talon would beg to differ. Talon plays drums. Talon gets out and looks like he's been in the steam room. It's a lot of work. So you have this very intentional activity that you're doing, but you need these casual events to provide the opportunity for the second question to come about naturally.
Right.
And I'd say naturally very distinctly. Dudes have that radar that goes up when you're trying to dig in and they're not ready, or they feel like you're like rooting around in their trash. They're like, look, man,
Protective mechanism. Like
I'm not saying I won't, but the way you're doing it, I don't like it. I'm not interested.
I don't know. I like you. You're pretty cool, but I'm not sure if I'm cool with you
Yeah.
poking around in my stuff.
Yeah, dude.
You know? Yeah,
Absolutely.
Ask me questions. The armor's coming back on. I'm out of here.
The armor comes back on. So
Can I take my own car?
Yeah, dude.
Get me out of here.
That's textbook Teal Merrick right there. I take my car everywhere. I do not want to be. I don't want to be stuck with somebody.
I'm stuck.
If 100 people can ride in my car, but I'm taking my car.
Yeah. Same.
I don't know what that is, but so the activities, what we go do, they can be anything.
Really, I mean, anything that a majority of guys would enjoy. A sporting event, watching a football game, even jam session. We've done that, right?
Yeah. And that's been awesome.
Bazooka
Those
launching.
You know, you reached out to me, and then over the course of a couple of months, we started to look for, okay, who else could step into this? And so Eli Romero comes to mind, and Eli steps in and is now helping to organize those things, and which gives him buy-in. He's been at everything anyway, so it's not like we were trying to. He was the lost lone sheep that we're trying to pull back into the fold. He was there the whole time, and then Eli spots somebody in the group that can, that's the way leadership is done. It's built into discipleship. Mm-hmm. This group works because of accountability, and we we've all had a friend that you haven't talked to in 5 years, but the second you pick up the phone and call, it's like you just continued where you left off, that kind of a friendship. And that's the way it is, because we do see each other most every week, but we text almost every day.
Oh, yeah.
And so there is that continuity. This could be a dangerous word. It's the threat of accountability.
Yeah.
It's the threat that, hey, by being in this group, I might be vulnerable. I might have to be vulnerable to somebody. And so I don't have to try to break down that wall with my second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth questions. It's just you being a part of it, and then you start to kind of hand your trust over to somebody else, and you see what else is going around with some of the other guys in the group, and you go, safe space. Okay, this is a safe space. So physically, we may only get together 4, 5, 6 times a year, but it's a daily conversation. And I love this weekend, we get, just out of the blue, in the group chat, a text from Rick, whose daughter graduated from Christ for the Nations.
So awesome.
And this beautiful picture of he and his daughter, and it melted my heart. And then to see all the responses, the hearts, the loves, at a girl, go Rick, those kinds of things. It's that continued feeding of, oneness almost, I don't know that I could pick Rick out of a lineup, to be honest. I know everybody else knows him, but I am still new enough at Trinity, but I'm already bonded with him because he shared that with me, So,
Well, tell us, so this is something that you started in January. Was it January? I think it was after the New Year.
Yeah.
And you send out, which I will say that is probably one of the most pivotal components of the Tabernacle Men's Group is the group chat, the group chat. Oh my gosh.
Group chat.
The group cat.
Help this man, Lord. Group chat, group text.
Group text, I guess.
Tell us about this. So you shoot out a scripture to us every day?
Pretty much.
Just pretty much. So tell us how this came about. Where'd this come from?
So there's a dear old friend of mine, one of my best buddies, is a rancher in Kenna, New Mexico. His name is Pat Boone. Pat, 4 years, has sent out a Bible verse a day. Just a super godly man, and well respected. A lot of connections because he's been, president of the Cattle Growers Association. He's running for New Mexico State Senate. Vote for Pat. He's a super duper godly guy that sends out this Bible verse every day. He's unassuming, he's humble, and he sent it out at one time probably 20, 30 guys, something like that. And I'm on that list. And so every morning at rancher's hours, like 5:15 in the morning, my phone vibrates and I'm like, there's Pat, there's his verse, And so I just thought, I'm just going to share that. I'm going to pass that on, because Pat's told me from time to time that he would get his own verse back at the end of the day from someone in some far off state, California or Nebraska or someplace, because those 20 guys would share it, and then it would just blossom, and then he eventually would get his own Bible verse back.
That's brilliant.
And so I've had some of the guys in the worship team like, hey, how are you picking these verses? Like, and I'm like, I'm not picking anything. I am copying and pasting is all I'm doing. And that's it. And it has been really
Oh my gosh, man.
crazy. Like I never would have thought that would be such a thing. So much so now that if there's a day that a verse doesn't come out, somebody will text like, hey, where's the verse?
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah. Everything all right, Billy?
What makes my laugh on that?
You sick? What's going on? Is your phone dead? So it's, I honestly don't know how Pat gets them, where he gets them. I would imagine it's because he is such a student of God's word. It's probably where he's at. Or, it's just, and so that's it. We just pass it along. And then our guys can pass it along to someone else. But what's the end result of that? If we're sharing God's word with people, and I meet people all the time that they don't think that they have the mental capability to study the word. I can't get into it. My attention span is so small, but we're not called to devour the Bible every year. If you do that, great. But that's not what the Lord's called you to do. He's called you to meditate on it.
Yeah, that's really good, Billy.
And so if you have one little verse, whether it's something that you've heard 1,000 times or something that you've never heard, and you have that in your brain all day long, you're meditating on that one verse. And I think that's why that's been so meaningful, is because guys that, especially pastors, people that are in the church, around the word all the time, to have one single verse like that you can just have as your pinpoint for that day really helps. But it does inspire a lot of conversation amongst the guys too.
Oh man,
Yeah,
it's
it really
so
does.
fun to see, because it too is like a jumping off point. It's like it reminds guys that this whole conversation is happening. And so I do think that guys pick their phone and they're like, oh, and they kind of go up further and they're like, oh, there was it's like, and so stuff gets kind of re-resurrected, and like not re-resurrected, but it gets resurrected. But it is, and I think too, this is another thing that I want to point out that I think has been really amazing, and it's helped us to debunk a few ideas about ministry life and what that looks like. You're not on staff. You are not staffed by Trinity Fellowship in any form whatsoever. But this is 100% an overflow of your heart. Like, this is what you're gifted to do, is bring men together, gather them, encourage them, lift them up.
Yeah.
So the
It's ministry.
it is ministry.
It is
And if
ministry.
again, I don't want to do this super often, but I know that there's people listening to this, and I want to encourage you. If you are on staff and you may feel like you are up to your eyeballs in tasks, there's somebody on your team right now that's really gifted at this, probably better than you are. You're gifted at this better than I am.
Yeah, but better than anybody on the team is. I mean,
Far
that's
better.
why you're
And,
Billy.
and so
Yeah.
to withhold it and be like, no, I need to do this. This is my job. This is what I'm on staff to do. You actually rob somebody on your team of something that they're really gifted at, and you rob the rest of your team of getting that thing that you're really good at. Like, it would be crazy looking back on it now, and and hindsight's 2020, but looking back on it now, being like, man, had we hung on to this thinking like, no, it's got to be a staff part, staff's got to do it, it's what we're on staff to do. Like, it's not like I'm not going to speak for you, but my assumption is it's not like your week is like 20, 30 hours of trying to put these verses together and put groups together. It's this is a extension of your personality. It's an extension of who you are.
Yeah.
It's very natural and you were the perfect person because this is who you are no matter if you were asked to do it or not.
Yeah.
You're going to be sending these text messages to guys anyways.
Yeah.
We might as well just throw everybody. And it's funny because I'll go through the group text, like who's in it. And I'm like, well, that guy, I don't know if he's really serving anymore. And I'm like, no, I guarantee you there's a couple names in there that if I ever pulled them out, they'd be like, dude,
What about Billy's verse today?
I need Billy's verse of the day. I know I can't right now, but I need to know what's going on. This is my lifeline out,
Yeah.
I think that that's very, very necessary there are people on our teams that are really gifted at things that we're not. And what a fallacy and crazy thought to think that just because you're on staff, you'd be good at all of it.
Absolutely. Well,
is nuts.
At some point, you run into the limit of even time, resources, ability, giftings. I mean, as a staff person, your whole job is to get the church doing the work of the ministry. Like,
Yes.
You're supposed to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. You're supposed to equip those who have callings on their life to start to walk those out. Like, as soon as you mentioned even the slightest spark of, that'd be interesting if we did a men's group. There it is. There's the spark. I'm going to go up there and fan that into flame. And it's been awesome. It's been the exact right thing. Yeah. You were the right person at the right time to say something, because we had been praying about it and asking God for somebody to lead this men's group because we knew that we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it was like we were at the end of our capacity, and then God provided. And he also, it was a desire of your heart as well to start to establish community within the worship department here. So really it was a win-win for both.
And what's funny is I didn't know that. I didn't come into this going, gosh, guys, if you just let me lead a men's group, because I would say I was so uncomfortable with the thought that I knew it was God. And that's how, good leaders in a worship ministry or any church ministry like you guys are have the ability to pull something out of somebody they didn't realize was in there. If we focus all our time doing the things that we know we're good at, then we tend to end up doing it in the flesh.
Sure.
That's a great point, Billy.
I honestly don't feel like I am worthy to be helping anybody out in counseling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always the school counselor, the weird uncle, the fun. I'm good at that. So I do that in the flesh. I know it's the favor of God that gives me relationship with these teenagers, and they feel a trust with me. But then when Matt and Amy Spears approached me and said, "Hey, Heidi's here. How come you're not here? You could do this." And my first thought was a bristle. I'm like, no. That's Heidi's deal, not mine. And still, after doing it for a couple of years, I still go in every time I have sessions like, "Oh, Lord, I need your help with this."
Yeah.
But all that to say, like, if you are able to have conversations and relationships with people, I feel more often you're able to see it in me before I see it in myself.
Yes, Billy. Yes. Come on, man.
So, one of the great things about this group is I've had lunch with Talon, and I've had lunch with Daniel Ennis, and, I've had these, had coffee with several of the guys, and every single time I come away going, wow, he is something, he's got something going in him. And as we start to hone that, as when God puts you in a position of leadership, he starts to hone that in you where you're able to say, hey, out of our pillars in worship, man, Talon would fit really good in this area of it. And then equip him and turn him loose, which helps your ministry, but also takes some of the load off of you.
Yeah.
Sure.
This is the culture. It's building it where it's not all done from the desk in a church.
Yeah.
It's done from people that you're building relationships with, accountability with, and then they can go out and do the work for you. It's Jesus sending out more than just the 12. He sent out 70, He equipped them, but then he sent them out and said, go, do what, help me.
Yeah.
So
That was how he started his church, right? It was just 12 people in close relation, 12 disciples, 12 apostles, and then sent them out to go and reproduce his teaching and his life in the church, and on it goes into today, which is really an awesome leadership principle. There's so much there, man. How have you seen community play out in the lives of your patients, mental health wise? Has it been an important factor? How has it influenced their behavior or things they're walking through, for good or bad?
It's the bad side of it is they often will come to counseling because they're in a community that facilitates the reason they're there. In other words, if they come in with just crippling anxiety or depression or whatever it is, they often have a network of people around them that speak the same language. There's no reprieve from what they're going through.
Only just like a reinforcing of...
Just reinforcing what they're going through. And so a lot of times counseling is successful just because they're in a different space. They have a chance to come in and bounce ideas or feelings in a place that's it's not going to be turned back on them, or they have the ability to come in and speak through their problems. And I tell clients all the time, listen, there's no miracle worker on the other side of the couch that you're sitting on. It's all, oftentimes 90% of the healing comes from you putting new thoughts. You hear things that come out of your mouth that you say, I never thought about it that way. Well, I didn't. You did that. So, and the positive on that is there is a community sense of when somebody comes to therapy, and then say, and they're obviously they have legal rights when they come to counseling, but. And I tell my clients all the time, if you see me in public and I don't acknowledge you or respond to you, it's not that I'm being a jerk. I'm protecting your privacy. So you have the ability to come up to me and initiate conversation, and that's great. But I do see that sometimes if I'm in public somewhere and I see a client, and they look and they smile, and I just kind of look down, and they come up and say hi or whatever. That community outside of the counseling environment probably is helpful for them because it's more than just an hour in session. It's seeing them somewhere else that they can remember that they have an advocate, somebody that knows their secrets. Here we go back to the vulnerability thing again, but somebody that knows their secrets and someone with whom they can entrust their secrets to and know that it's not violated. And so it's difficult though, because it is called private practice for a reason, you know, and so it's the community aspect is hard for me to see, other than just what I assume I would imagine is going on, and from what they bring to me in a session. If that makes sense.
Right. I think that part of the healing process for them or for anyone going through a difficult time is being surrounded by someone who will, from a biblical stance, speak the truth in love, right? And find a community that's actually pointing them towards something that's going to heal them, not just pointing them back to themselves or back to and reinforcing the negative behaviors and thoughts that they're plaguing them, right?
Right.
It's a community that's going to pull them up instead of keep them down.
And it is going back to the community part of maybe a person comes in and it's not that they have a community that feels the same way. It's that they're enabled to follow down the negative path. Like, oh, I'm depressed. Well, yeah, life's hard. There's no challenge to their feelings, and so it is kind of a loving, gentle blockade in saying, okay, stop right there, though. It doesn't have to be this way. So I'm not going to allow you to continue to, shove yourself down in this depression hole or this anxiety hole. Let's challenge that thought and give it something different, a new perspective.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's whenever you start to turn, right? That's the process.
I will say to this, be interesting to hear your thoughts on, because what you're presenting is that there's a healthy community requires some accountability. Mm-hmm. That if your community doesn't come with accountability, I'm not sure how much of a community is in the true sense of the word. Now, truth be told, given the internet, you can build a community just about around anything. Mm-hmm. Weird, unhealthy, good, positive, negative, horrific. Right. You can build community as a group of people that collectively enjoy, feel, agree, espouse, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That technically can be a community. But what we're talking about is that there's a positive function of this, is that we're all pursuing the presence of God. That's the whole reason that we're playing music, is that you can go play music lots of places. Mm-hmm. If you've chosen to play music in church, there's a part of you that has probably experienced it out in other places, and you've said, I'm all good. I actually don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to play in bars anymore. I don't want to play here anymore. Not that there's anything wrong with those places, but there's something that most of the guys that show up and want to play eventually have said, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and I don't really enjoy it anymore. And I want to use this, and it's the most common statement I hear. I want to use what God's given me to glorify Him or bring a positive impact to people's life. Mm-hmm. But with that, what we're presenting in this is not a community we're building. We're building the community around the pursuing of God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right? So
really
without God in the center of it, this is just kind of a new age music fan group. We all like to play music, and we're going after positive things. Right. This is different because our relationship with the Lord imposes a natural willingness to be open to discussing some things that might not be completely in alignment yet.
Yeah.
Right? We're glory to glory. Yeah. That's the idea, is that the Lord is ever unfolding things that need to be worked on in us. And this community, not just our community, but other church-based communities that are pursuing the presence of God, I think are very specifically needed in a man's life over just, it's a group of us that like to go hunting.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. A hunting thing is awesome. Is there anything in your life, community-wise, that's pulling you up and drawing you into the presence of God, drawing you closer to the Lord? It doesn't have to be, so what, now I got to go start being a Bible study. No, you don't have to go start being a Bible study. I'm not saying that. But there's something so necessary about the community we're talking about that is in pursuance of God's presence, paired with somebody knows me. I think, too, that's the part that I think is so profound, and we talked about this last time, and I wanted to make sure this got in here. Men and men who play music, I think, wrestle the hardest with the thing I need the most is somebody to accept me and know me and be okay with who I am, but I am scared to death to let somebody know who I am and what exactly I've been through. So this tug of war happens in the hearts of men and the hearts of, I think, musician types or creative types, because you want so badly for those vulnerable parts. Making music is vulnerable. It's a vulnerable activity, especially to show it to anybody. It's one thing to just play in your room casually. I learned a couple songs and that's it. But if you play music, at some point you've got to become vulnerable enough where you say, I've worked on this, I've spent a lot of time on it, and I would like to share it with you now.
Yeah. Woo.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's rough.
Dude, the first time I remember I played, I learned some, I can't remember, it was like a Dave Matthews song. And the first time I sat down, it was like, hey, can I show this to person, whoever it was, I can't remember.
Well, how many times have I said, hey, Teal, I got some stuff I've written I want you to hear. And you're like, yeah, bring it on. And how much of that have you heard? One, maybe?
Yeah.
It's hard to get over.
The reality of what I think we're proposing here and what we would encourage anybody that's listening is there's a component of this kind of community that requires a high 50,000 foot view pursuance of God's presence. We're all going. So that's one key feature of this group is it's not in every second of our conversation. Yeah. We're not talking about that all the time, but our whole purpose for being together is we all decided that we want to play music, and we want to play music in this capacity.
Yeah.
And we're all doing it on the weekend. And like you said, there's that catalyzing event that we all did together, and then we're doing some of these other things to ask the second question. So the services naturally build in this pursuance of something bigger, something greater. We all want to be a part of this, and it's very obvious to all of us when we finish a set. We're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? You're very well aware that was not because of my guitar part, or that was not because of my acoustic guitar playing. It was the collective effort of the group. So that's kind of already built in. The community component of being together is to introduce the opportunity to say, hey, when are you going to be ready for me to ask the second question? Because I'm going to ask it.
Yeah. I feel like there's three. So if you're playing music in bars or wherever, you have one layer of vulnerability, like one connection, and that is, let's play Neon Moon really in the pocket. Wow, that turned out great. And then that's the end of it. But if you take your gifts into the church and do that, now you've added a second layer of vulnerability. I keep using that word, but you're doing the same thing. You're playing a worship song, and it comes out great. It's in the pocket. It's just more than the music. There's something beyond that because you're glorifying God. Yeah. That's the second piece. I can't tell you if I've ever played Neon Moon and went like, glory to God, that went so good. That doesn't happen. So what we're doing is we're putting in this third layer of vulnerability or this accountability component, which is coming together and understanding that, okay, we're in a church, and unfortunately in the flesh, the misconception is that you have to have it all together. When in fact, not one single person of us has it all together. But that is the layer of vulnerability to say, hey, I'm up here playing music, but I'm still struggling with anger. Yeah. Like I should not, and I don't want to tell anybody about that because they'll think that I don't belong here. Mm-hmm. So what we have seen, and it's been great, is the varnish is off. Yeah. And for a lot of these pocket relationships, like, hey, look, yeah, I'm playing bass every weekend, but you know what? I still struggle in this area of my life. Mm-hmm. I'm still there. And then the other person responds with, me too. So now you've got this great deep love for music and a song well played, and its result, because it's glorifying God. Then off the stage, we come together with this third layer of we're all rowing the same boat. Like we're all struggling currently with things. I mean, we're still, God is still working things out in us. And then I think we've seen that over and over to the point where like, man, this is awesome. So now we run it back. Now that we've had these conversations on a Monday or a Tuesday or Wednesday, when we meet on Sunday, we have this bond of that third layer of vulnerability. And that's the community piece that's so prosperous is we're all vulnerable now in all areas of our life, so we can be better on Sundays.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's such an important thing too that I think happens is that for me to open up to you and say, man, I'm really wrestling with this. And the instant reaction is like, dude, what is wrong with you? It's not that. Yeah. And then also, because usually when I've had, sit down sessions with guys or we're talking through stuff, guys are working, can I still play? Yeah, you can still play. And I kind of have a running rule, and I want to be careful about this because there's a lot of nuance to this. I don't can people from playing for very much. I want to talk through things with you. I want to pastor you. I want to work, because that's not, if you just change your behavior because you're scared you're not going to get to play anymore, you'll find something else that you'll fall into. Mm-hmm. I want to know what's going on in your heart. Mm-hmm. If you're open and honest with me and we can walk a path forward, we can lay out okay, that's probably not the best thing for you, right? You can, okay, so we need to stop doing this. It's not just like, oh man, you're great. Don't sweat it. Yeah. Just,
You'll get over it.
Yeah. No, I want to walk with you. I want to walk, outside of you doing something illegal, I'm going to walk you through just about anything that you tell me.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what is stirring in the hearts of guys that are wanting to be known, is I need to share this. We talked about this, that confess your sins one to another for healing. It's necessary for guys to be able to look at me being the worship pastor and say, I'm getting really mad at my wife when we have these conversations, and I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. I, as the pastor, can't be like, well, anybody who plays on the weekend can't get mad. So
we'll have to sit you down for a little.
We'll have to sit you down until you can get, you'll need to stop getting mad about things, and then you can start playing again. No. I'm going to say, okay, let's talk about that. Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
What's the last conversation you guys had? Have you guys considered counseling? That's kind of the pastor's role, is to sit down and say, okay, A, I'm not shocked. B, I'm not going to run you off. I'm still connected to you.
Yeah.
We're in community. Mm-hmm. Magic word here. We're in community. And you have come to me and said, I'm open to accountability. I want to be vulnerable. That's the hardest part of accountability, is bringing your stuff. Yeah. Me as a pastor, it's not my job in the accountability role to be a detective. We've talked about this a lot. Mm-hmm. If you're a pastor, your job is not to be a detective and go digging around and being like, well, so-and-so saw you out and they said this. And no, that's not the Lord knows. The Lord absolutely knows. And those things always end up floating their way to the top. Mm-hmm. So if I choose to participate in accountability with you, that's me bringing you, hey man, Katie and I got into another fight and I lost my cool and I need to talk about it. Okay. Well, what was it about? Well, it was about this and it made me feel, okay, well, we've talked about that. Mm-hmm. Here's some tools, here's some things to equip you. That's our role in community, is that guys are looking for that opportunity to share the vulnerable parts of their heart, to walk in some accountability. Because I do think genuinely men and musicians and people involved in this want that, for someone to check them. Hey, were you just talking to your wife on the phone? Yeah. Bro, what was that? Why did you say it like that? Like, you can't talk to her. Oh, no, it's not that big of a deal. She thinks it's funny.
No, it is.
Well, it's not funny. I love you. Now, you can't do that first football game. You go hang out, sod poodles for the first time, you're hanging out with this person. I wouldn't suggest that. Yeah. That will come about naturally. But eventually, that's the accountability part, is that guy probably inside is like, oh, gosh. What's going to happen next? Hey, just, soften it up a little bit. Yeah. This is really intense. Like, you don't even talk like that.
Very short. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, It's your job to take, I'm giving examples. I don't want to get caught up in the weeds here, but the component of pursuing something greater than ourselves, pursuing, in our aspect, what we're talking about here is that we are getting together for the specific purpose of playing music that helps people get over the barrier of themselves and be in the presence of God. So that's the common goal. And then to it, the community helps provide the opportunity for the second question. I will use that for the rest of my life, the second question, is to be able to have the opportunity for a follow-up of, hey, after we've played 10, 15 services together, there's a natural element there of like, hey, how are you and your wife doing?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what's going on with your kids? It will happen.
Yeah.
It will come about, man. We're going through something with my daughter.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do. And they'll share something. And you'll have this opportunity to, and guys, I'm telling you, you're going to want to fix it. Don't try to fix it. We're just listening. Just allow that stuff to naturally come. Hey, have you let's keep talking about that. Let's grab lunch and we can talk more about it. It's a slow burn. You're not trying to grow corn crops in a week. Cry
with me. Don't try to fix me.
Yes. Like I'm lots of guys are just going to be testing the waters.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this out here. I'm going to see how you respond to this. If you come at me, fix, you should be doing this. Duly noted.
Yeah.
I probably won't do that again.
Yeah.
So, we could probably go for another 2 hours, but we need to probably wrap this up. Billy, thank you.
Thanks, Billy.
Absolutely.
This has been fantastic.
Yeah.
We covered some unique ground that we didn't get to the first time. Revisited a couple things in a unique way this time that we did last time. So thank you so much for being a part of this. As always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us your time. We know that there's a million different things you could be listening to right now. There's millions of podcasts you could be listening to. So if you chose to take time out of your schedule to listen to us, we want to say thank you. That means a lot to us. As always, we'll say it again. We are part of the Trinity Fellowship worship team and the worship staff. If you're looking for a church home, we would love for you to join our church family. Just come kick the tires, come check it out, come say hi to us. If you're in the Amarillo area, come by, see us at the Willow Creek campus or in the Amarillo, the Hollywood Road campus. Good Lord. But also go check out tfc.org. You can check out all the other resources that we have, the other campuses we have. But until the next time, we'll see you later.